wanted to ask you some questions about like what are your thoughts? Because I know you're not really into the flat Earth so much as some of us are, but you know what's going on with it. So I've been, interested to, I'm kind of interested to know what your thoughts are. Ooh, stumbling over my words. What your thoughts are regards to what's going on there.
Yes, I have quite some thoughts, maybe even feelings or beliefs about it. Do you have any specific questions or things that interest you in particular, just so I can be
Well,
structured in my answers?
yeah, just give us a kind of your general take of what you've been observing through the whole process, and what you thought. Maybe some of those thoughts have changed over time. Do you think the final experiment is a false dichotomy or not? Things like that, because I think you're kind of looking outside in. You're not with like the flat Earth crowd so much, but you've been watching. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes, I've been, and I'd like to commend you again for doing, so many different types of amazing interviews. I know it can be like, oh, this fanboy is coming on to Glaze, not Chiquetta, but I gladly do it. I don't care. I really think you're doing a great job. Also, the last Will Duffy interview, I think, was spectacular and brought some new ideas to light, some things maybe you were not aware of, I wasn't aware of either. I'm almost like hoping that he's watching because I want to say with this guy, honestly, like with most people, I want to say, I want them, to be nice, honest. Maybe he's just a bit naive or something. Who knows how it happened that he stumbled across his million at 33 and had to make 33 open theism things
Hmm.
and all of these things. And maybe, because I know belief systems can be so different that it really can seem impossible to understand someone and you attribute all kinds of strange things to them. But it can be that they're simply somewhere completely else in terms of their understanding, belief system, education, approach. Um, However, uh, the how should I say that you didn't ask that one question, but I also forgot to mention it. Why it appears maybe it's like the way he's talking to his parishioners, you call it. I'm not sure. This
Yeah.
very basic, simple language, emotionally driven. He likes to use. That's a sticking point in any case. The false dichotomy for me remains from beginning to end, and it seems maybe through this process, I'm not sure, Will Duffy also understands that better now because he even said, oh, actually, maybe it's important that both sides really agree on something. And I'm not randomly picking, in this case, two of maybe the most, or three of the most, which word do I use? Um, uh, Ideological punching bags, let's say from the globe Earth perspective, that no
Hmm.
one from the other side likes. And then I pick up one, two, three supposedly individuals from the flat Earth and then pretend that everyone thinks exactly as they do. I'm
Hmm.
wondering honestly if it's really just his naivete or whatever, or whatever is behind there. But what definitely remains, in any case, it's a false dichotomy. A sky
Hmm.
observation doesn't change the shape of whatever is below my feet.
Yep.
um, and yeah, ideally, I mean, he said he's open to it. Let's agree on much more simpler experiments, whatever, forcing the line,
Yeah, he did.
buying water level things or whatever to do simple stuff and fund that. And I think that would be something more reasonable, something that could even be maybe replicated 5 times for a quarter the price of whatever this operation is going to be. But what also remains still at the very end is the big question mark: is it really possible that you accumulate this degree of wealth and your actual honest intention is only, as he claims, for the benefit of mankind or whatever in his operations?
Hmm.
Like, do you
Hmm.
even get up to a million by 33 and all of that? If that is really has always been your focus, or maybe his focus recently shifted, I don't know. Um, yeah, these are some of the thoughts I have surrounding
Yeah.
this idea.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly am not a millionaire, and I guess I have a friend who became a millionaire, and he put in time and effort to make his business, and and he grew, and within 2 3 years of creating this business, he started to double his money, triple his money, and quadruple his money, and stuff like this, and now it's pretty consistent in the way in which he's making money, and he's venturing out into other things to make more money. So, and he's my age, and obviously there are people who became successful at an early age for whatever reason. I think it's, I don't know, like a combination of things like luck and intelligence and wisdom, and but you can't doubt that these people can be handpicked by people above or whatever for whatever reason, but you still have to have some qualities of intelligence to be able to carry out whatever instructions they may have for them. You know what I mean? I mean, like whether it's like for good or for bad, you still have to have some ability to organize and think through, and be a man of your word to carry out these tasks in order to be able to do the thing. So again, the question really in my mind, and maybe perhaps other people's mind, is like, hey, how genuine is this guy? And that's been the question that I've had since the beginning, and I haven't really came to any conclusions about like, well, so he's definitely demonic or something like that. But at the same time, I have to kind of be like, okay, he seems really intelligent, put together, is successful, and Christian, and yes, out of intrigue with Bob Enyard and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, I can't just go by somebody's testimony and said that who says that Bob Enyard is like evil and he's a mass murderer and stuff like this. It's just some eyewitness account, and they made some videos. And yes, it is kind of convincing some of the things that they have said, but it's not like end all be all to somebody's reputation. So I'm still reserved about what I'm observing, and I think I would definitely like to have another conversation or two with Will before they go to Antarctica. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Yes, maybe if you can, you want to reconnect your mic or something, because there is a strange muffled sound, but it's switching like on and off every 10 seconds. You're clear, and then it's a bit strange. I'm not sure. Maybe it's something you can
Okay.
fix.
I yeah.
Great. Yes. So yeah, there's many open questions. What I guess can be said, which I think is also great, and I want to say appropriate, that Will Duffy obviously respects you. As he said, he's given you the 2-hour interview, or as other people, maximum get an hour. I think that's great. I honestly, like I wrote in the chat when you did the interview, massive props to both of you for showing up, especially because you've been one of maybe this project's most thorough critics. What I'd like to bring up on the money side, no matter how it's tied together, and even without a Netflix special, because last time with Z, I was like, oh, how much would this be worth? You have, let's say,
Mhm.
100 million staunch Christians, let's say 50 million. Let's say each have a budget of only 10 euro, you're at 500 million. But let's even forget all of that. Let's just think of all the content that has been created due to the final experiment, all the spin-off and so on. And I'm not suggesting this is the case, but let's just calculate 5% of the ad revenue that was created solely because now the final experiment exists and all kinds of larger channels are picking up on it. What is the amount of money generated? So however you slice it, there is a huge amount of money attached to this. And if it really goes down to challenging cosmology or something, or reinforcing cosmology, this is tied together, as we know, with so many belief systems. The back end valuation of this is probably not even really possible to be estimated properly, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and what is the value of maintaining the status quo too? I mean, like not just the fact of like selling tickets or Netflix and whatever whatever these TV shows generate in terms of revenue. I'm talking about like just the status quo of keeping people like sleeping to the fact that the Earth is a globe. Right? They keep on wanting to let everybody know that the Earth is a globe and go back to sleep, and Earth is a globe, go back to sleep over and over again. And I have to believe that this is a part of that production of maintaining that status quo. And that is like almost unestimatable, like you cannot estimate how much that is worth.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else that you want to kind of share about what you have observed? Because I value your observation and your thoughts in regards to the interview and stuff like this. And I've gotten mixed reviews, and some of the things I'm going to talk about later on after you know uh, after you decide to go to sleep or something like this because it's something more aligned to my monologue and me admitting to the fact that I have blundered in some areas, but that's fine. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being at the end of the day, so I do make mistakes, and there are a few things that I did not speak properly on. So I'm going to address that, but I'll do that later on.
Yes. Again, any, let's say, particular direction, just so then maybe something comes up in my mind in terms of what else stood out. I mean, one thing, just something random, but there is
Mm-hmm.
a guy, for example, by the name of Pirate Software. He's a developer previously for Blizzard, and now he's gotten quite popular within the last year somehow through shorts and so on. Very nice,
Mm-hmm.
interesting guy. But even this kind of guy, and this was very recently, 1 or 2 days ago, made a short. In his case, it was supposedly about interconnected mumbo jumbo conspiracies or whatever. But still, he
Okay.
takes the example of flat Earth. And he's, got quite the reach. He's got, of course, his particular audience. And repeatedly, I noticed this even when you check out these various, supposed commentary channels. One I stumbled across, for example, is called Sir Sick, SIC, or all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of others. And they do all kinds of stuff. But very, very often, their main popular videos, just like this Mulder lady, supposedly I showed you. I think Mulder was
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
name with his videos as a trans rule the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their top videos so often actually are about flat Earth, or these are the most viewed ones, whether that's purely organic or not. But I find that highly curious. And it's just definitely clear that whether it is due to the final experiment or that it's just embedded in the zeitgeist, which again is embedded in maybe other programmings, but it seems very clear to me that this year, again, many channels, let's say, that would not have this topic as their mainstay are not just considering, but leaning towards or doing videos which deal with this topic. And usually, of course, not from a very educated perspective, but at least it, let's say, gains mainstream popularity enough that someone who regularly doesn't really even understand about it or just want to make fun of it, they now pick it up again to make videos of it. And I just find that interesting. So just, let's say, the quote unquote environmental heat or whatever you would call it surrounding that topic certainly appears to increase, at least on YouTube or whatever, the algorithm serves you, which may also, of course, be highly individual and subjective.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't know about this Surge Sick Crusader guy until recently. For whatever reason, YouTube decided to give it to me by algorithm. I guess I'm getting like these and I'm getting like pro globe algorithm that is being fed to me, from random channels that I have never heard of, including this Surge Sick Crusader guy. And I decided to check him out. And, like he's another like Professor Dave, FTFE, Dave McKeegan, McToon, you name it, Creaky guy. I mean, like there's a bunch of them. And those are like the top ones that I just named off in my mind within the who is against the flat earth. But like he has a pretty big channel. I mean, like 20 some thousand subscribers, and then his latest videos got nearly 30,000 views. So that's not something to sneeze at compared to me. Like like my average views is maybe 1,000. Maybe 1,000, and if I get like 1.5, that's like, woo, I'm actually being listened to. So there's like 20 times more people listening to this guy, and he's not even a top flat Earth content creator. You have Professor Dave in his recent video; he's got 320,000 views. Nearly
Yeah, because
2 days
he
ago.
just picked up TFE recently, right? I think. I didn't
He
watch it
what?
really, but he picked up TFE, like
Yeah,
something
yeah,
about
yeah,
final experiment, right? Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I mean, for this can be for various reasons. The algorithm, I guess, likes to serve content that's, I almost want to say, not too well researched or whatever. I mean, there's a few factors. There's production value, existing subscribers, engagement levels. Supposedly, there's this whole algorithm within and behind YouTube. But what I can say, and that's why I also sent you this video, it's obvious that
Mhm.
certain content simply is completely shadow banned. Like this
Yeah.
Exertus McMoon video, anyone can look it up.
Mhm.
I'm posting it in the chat if you can check
Yeah,
it
I will.
yourself. Um, Exertus McMoon tapes. and you simply cannot find it on the regular search. And what it deals with is simply that Andreas found the old NASA recordings in an abandoned McDonald's on a military base when he was a NASA intern. And then when he was like, well, actually, I know how to deal with all the electronic stuff. I can help you that you can actually watch these again, because the guy said it's inaccessible. Next time he comes back, it's all gone. Yeah. Jokes like
Mhm.
this. And the video obviously is shadow banned. And this is, maybe not the big smoking gun or something, but if they even deliberately, throw such kind of video or sweep it under the rug, throw it under the bus, I mean, for what? Yeah. So that's very obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, we understand why they would do that. I did listen to that video. It's definitely intriguing. I don't know how much interest that you have to want to watch it because I know you don't have a lot of time. So, what do you feel like doing, Raphael? I feel like
We
your
can
time is valuable, you
Yeah,
know,
thank you.
to
That's
talk.
highly appreciated. And also, I'll just, stay as long as I have energy until the generator's off. So we can go any direction you like. The one thing that's kind of frustrating me, maybe you shared it a little
Mm,
bit, is that there's so many, discussions on all kinds of different channels about history and this and that, or even recently there was an Austin Whitsitt debate I somehow tuned in, or he was
mm,
moderating it between two professors. And then, of course, one again is talking about, oh, the ancient Greeks and this and that. And I'm
mhm,
always like,
mhm,
it's always like hurting my head. I'm like, I'm sorry, like, how can you be a serious researcher and not at least have your own model as to why you can properly exclude Fomenko's new chronology? I'm fine with that if you
right.
have your reasoning, yeah? But like, you're supposedly researching this, you have no clue about it, and you still use like tropes of things that supposedly happened 2000 years ago, and you're claiming you have an exact record. I can just recommend listening, and this is one of the next videos I'm going to translate because I'm now playing around with
Mhm,
this Nova AI voice cloning, which works decently well.
mhm,
And one recent video by Serge Belaboa, who's doing these great translations from Russian into English, which is helping me, of course, because then the AI can translate from English and I can be sure it's actually proper, obviously, because I don't understand Russian. But the most recent interview he released with Gleb Nosovsky, and then
mhm.
Gleb is just very basically the question is like, what is history and so on. And he's in a very basic, it's actually kindergarten logic in the most
Yeah.
positive sense. He's telling you, well, have you considered there is always a narrator for any story? If there is an accident, if there's anything, you have two witness accounts. They can vary greatly. And then imagine they are getting copied once, twice, three times, they split up again. How
Mhm,
reliable is the information really? And this is such basic logic that I'm really wondering how any serious researcher, professor, academician, even YouTube investigator or whatever just manages to wholesale ignore that. That's incredible to me. Of course, many simply don't know about Fomenko.
mhm.
That's okay. But I really think by now everyone, I don't know, I would wish everyone would get up to speed. But yeah,
Oh.
of course.
I know, I know, and I feel the same way though too. I mean, because like
Or
once
just
you
refute
go,
it. Just refute it. If they can refute it, I'm fine with it. And then we can keep talking about it or discussing if it's a good refutation. But just like this, I'm like, it's a bit weak. Please go
yeah,
on.
absolutely. No, no, I 100% concur and agree. And it's just, it's based on ignorance, and it's the fact that, and I was watching that video though too today because it came out recently with Gleb Novzesky. Can never pronounce his name right, but about like just questioning history, and it's just like you said, it's like very basic stuff. Like, have you considered, like that history could be like faked, obfuscated, people lie about shit, and we know, and then to what degree, and that's the question. And and just going back to this ancient Egypt, the ancient Greeks, and the Romans and stuff like that, it's just like something that like everybody has to um just accept. We just have to accept the fact that that's the fact, and then long time ago in Palestine, 2000 years ago, like people in robes, herding shepherds existed and stuff like that. We just have to accept that, like some 3000 BC or 2000 BC, 1000 BC, whatever, But then when you go into this alternative historical research line, same thing with the flat Earth. Like once you go into it and then you understand the logic behind, what that represents, you can't go back. There's no going back to this, timeline that they have just like force fed you since you were young. there's no going back to this like low birth they have force fed you since you were young, you know? So both of those are, in my mind, parallel in the terms of like what they are actually like doing to obfuscate like human consciousness, and I think they play a very big role differently, of course, like obfuscation of history and the obfuscation of like and the perception of what this reality is. But nevertheless, it is about the twisting and changing the perception of what reality is. So that's why I think it's fascinating, and that's why it's important to get into those topics.
Yes, there's actually, I mean, we can honestly do a whole show about this. And I'm seeing you just getting the notification. You can check out these pictures. Maybe if you even can, you can check them out for yourself right now. They're not
Mhm,
really for publication. Um,
mhm.
so what I did recently, there is a site close to Vienna, actually just this weekend, which is a private excavation site. And if you wish,
Mhm.
we could talk a little bit about that. Maybe you can take a look at the pictures at least for yourself, so you know it's not, complete invention, what I'm telling you.
Right.
But there
Mhm.
was quite a few interesting tidbits there. If you maybe that's something interesting we can talk about for a bit, if you like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can. I have it already downloaded, and I have faster internet now. I'm no longer on 5 megabyte download upload speed. I can actually download things at a normal speed. Like hundreds of megabytes per second. So like I'm just like, wow, this is the modern world right here. So shall I pull up the photos?
Oh, no, don't pull them up because they're not for
Into it.
publication.
Okay.
They're basically just for
Oh,
you to
okay.
see,
Right.
and I'm sorry to the audience in a way. I just want to respect the guy because basically this is the
Yes.
the life's work of 25, 30 years. So
Wow.
I'll just relay some of the ideas. So there is this site close to Vienna.
Okay.
Anyone who's actually in the area and who's interested, I can connect you to the proper groups where you then can get guided tours to this place. And also there is
Hmm.
a famous researcher by the name of Dr. Heinrich Kusch, Kusch, Kusch Unterwelten. I'm posting it. And there are
Hmm.
some publications, although even they are redacted, and you can get the unredacted versions at that place actually, or really, if you really want to drop me a message, I'll connect you. The main point here
Okay.
being that this site was, let's say, discovered. The guy is a, I believe, biochemist or something along those lines. And then over the past 20, 30 years, started excavating this mostly by himself and then inviting all different kinds of professors, researchers, and so on to do their proper archaeological work. And what it appears to be is it's a multi-layered, multi-story underground site, and it also appears as if there are some layers or levels or then add-ons which may have happened quote unquote later in their chronology, or in his they still talk about the quote unquote Romans. Now we understand
Hmm.
there is this huge issue with Scaliger, but let's just say as a frame of reference, one group Romans which may have added certain things on. There's also certain Latin inscriptions which are quite interesting in terms of ideology. The connection that's given is, I believe, to an individual named Stephen Harding, who was a Druid. I'm just looking this up if I find this properly. Stephen Harding. Which one? The Running Man. Now, Stephen King is the first thing that comes up. That's really funny. Okay, Stephen Harding says English-born monk and abbot, one of the founders of the Cistercian order. Now that'd be interesting. Probably that's the guy who's talked about. Oh, and he has a fresco in Hungary. Anyways, so what they here talk about, or the ideology he relays, is there's some inscriptions in Latin, and it basically appears as if at least one level of the site that is excavated was, for lack of a better term, a Templar site. You have all these Templar crosses around. You have
Hmm.
inscriptions in Latin, which of course would make it very interesting if we can determine when Latin really was invented. Then we can,
Hmm.
of course, understand when could this be etched in. And it seems to be, let's say, a ritual conception site, actually, with a very high esteem, let's say, of the women in particular. There's like baths. There's also certain spots which are energetically charged, whereas, and some of the individuals, they tried it and they felt it. You basically, put your hands inside the wall or you stand inside a particular corner, and you can feel it, for example, in your body something buzzing, which could indicate some organ that is weakened, or in a different spot for women, you can feel like your lower body is getting lighter or something. So it seems
Hmm.
these were like preparation spots or almost like medical analysis, but it's just a spot in the wall. Yeah. And the interesting thing here is there is other layers below. This would then get into the quote unquote prehistoric period, which they say is associated with something called the Danube civilization or Donau-Zivilisation, which is supposed to be around 6, or he says about 8,500 years ago, according to certain methods they call TCM dating, where they don't use radiocarbon dating, but another process I cannot properly reiterate now. I'll do proper research on that and then try to falsify and check back how much credence we can give to that particular process. But anyhow, they claim 8,500 years ago is one of the lower levels they found. And here they found instruments going up to basically surgery instruments. And they are very well preserved, like made of thin, even of like mammoth bone. And you have a statuette which has shortened legs. And also they found a bone piece which appeared to be much too large. But if they then match it back with the statuette, it looks like basically there were some humanoid but not human form, which got into the lore as a goddess type statuette. And there was even a bone found from it, which, how should you call it, crypto humanoid or something. And just to
Hmm.
give one example, which is the main issue with all of this, is that he spoke with professors and so on within Europe, of course. And what they basically told him is, we're very sorry, but basically we have a directive from the European Union not to research or label anything Danube civilization because, and now get this, because of the German-speaking region's history with Nazism. Basically, we don't want them to believe that they may have some kind of forefather civilization that maybe could have been highly technologically advanced or whatever else. That's their official reasoning. But at the same time, if we understand how many strange people and connections split off from exactly that time into the current government structures, both in America and in Europe and elsewhere, it's, let's say, a, how would I say, double joke or something.
Hmm.
But so main point being that there is simply no funding for this type of research. And whenever he then came into contact with some high-level scientists or whatever, they either reacted, how should I say, shocked, or they didn't want to go deeper into it, or they simply told him they can't properly research this because they know their career will be over. There's even
Right.
one or two examples of scientists that actually went into that area, did help him a great deal, and now one guy is working, I want to say, as an insurance broker or something completely unrelated, because he basically completely got kicked out of the academic circus. I want to say it now, because he was willing to be honest and willing to, give proper, honest scientific assessments and not just follow whatever supposed narrative is given from the funding sources. And in the example with the strange hip bone or upper part of the leg, which is very thick but too short, but again would match this statuette, where it didn't get any funding or publication in Europe. It actually got publicized by a university in Kazan, of all places. And although the individual presenting and administrating and excavating this privately did not really jive too much when I was mentioning Fomenko and was still using the other timeline, although he agreed with potential issues with radiocarbon dating, although also claiming that they have been resolved, which I doubt. I'll try to recheck this. Um, but aside from that, he also himself mentioned that, yes, it very much seems as if in the East or in Russia, scientists are more free to discuss certain things. So basically, it seems he's also received support even so far as publicizing certain findings, which basically are shadow banned academically in Europe,
Hmm.
which, of course, to us is not so surprising. But it's great to hear these examples. And it's, how should I say, it's very real. There's so many
Yeah.
pieces there, and there's only one museum in Austria that displays these things. This is the Burgenmuseum Deutschlandsberg. So it's a castle museum in Deutschlandsberg in Styria. But the only way how they are allowed to display it is by displaying it alongside some other things and basically not giving any descriptions. because even here there is a regulation that basically every description in a museum, imagine this even in Austria, must be approved by the Ministry of Education. And now, I mean, I don't want to talk about any, Politburo or Central Censoring Committee, but like, what is this? But basically, by not having any descriptors there and just having it randomly lay around, let's say, they are allowed to exhibit at least some artifacts which would pertain to the so-called Danube civilization, which again, other than that, is basically completely barred from any funding in Europe, which again is the obvious link with the research that David has been sharing and that we're interested in, basically the idea of some quote unquote ancient, or I'd say even just thousands-year-old civilization in Europe that may have been advanced. And what's important here, again, this is I believe, originally medieval Latin text, which again, questionable, and we have to verify the dating. But it appears there is a decree from about 1550, a Munich decree. I'll try to look this up properly to be able to share it. Whereas it is said that Christians, Muslims, and whoever else, of course, alternative chronology raises the question, but let's just stay with this idea, put out a commandment, whereas they said, now worldwide, we want to basically close or enclose, or however you call it, any type of underground access sites. So it appears there were many of these underground access sites, and there was a decree to basically worldwide, how do you call it, like fill them up with mud or whatever they had. And the only reason why in this particular excavation site was able to be excavated so far and so many things could be found is because there is a certain, let's say, siphon structure with water or something. Honestly, when it was described to me, it reminded me of some kind of, I don't know, Temple of the Sea from Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, where, you like swim around, you swim down the water and then you can come up somewhere else and there's air, even though you're like 50 meters more below, stuff like this. And that's part of the reason why when they tried to fill up this site, whenever this was, they did not completely succeed. And some lower layers are perfectly preserved because whatever they were filling it with, they weren't able to fill it properly at that time or transport the material there or whatever. So it's, but there was a big effort to enclose that. And then just, randomly talking with participants, one mentioned that even in Vienna, there was a time when he had access to, because of doing electrician's work or something, to buildings and to certain levels. And he said the deepest he's gone, and this is Vienna, was the 33rd story below, 33 stories below. And he said he had to walk down for like 40 minutes to even get there. And by then he didn't know about all that stuff, so he wasn't researching it, but he just mentioned like, oh, did you know? And there are tours, of course, in Vienna called Der dritte Mann, the third man, which are about the canal systems in Vienna and some movies they did or something. But of course, they probably barely show you the first level. And, that's like the PR stunt. But there's a lot more. And certainly over time, a huge amount of attention and investment has gone into obfuscating this. If you really, fill up these huge rooms and so on, and hide, whatever there is to hide. It's crazy. But these sites may well be that they are all over the place. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And like that's a very specific number, like 33 levels below, and potentially there could be more, right?
Yes. And there's one more thing I'd like to mention
hmm
regarding this thing. And so the story has gone around, also originating from this place. It appears that basically there are quartz deposits wherever these so-called Erdstelle or underground tunnels are. And now get this, and this is where it gets really interesting. You have medieval depictions, and in this case, the ones you see, they actually are 95% original because they were, again, just like walled in or something, but they could uncover it and they were original and they really look like, let's say, genuine medieval depictions. One of the things you see like a metal spiral, and it appears as if this may have been one of the instruments which they took inside this underground level. And there is one particular room which has a strange inscription and its entrance, which may say something, like Templar cross and then something with portal, this and that. On the one hand, it may
Mhm.
relate to the whole, let's say, conception rites and so on. But on
Okay.
the other hand, it may refer to this particular room, which is connected with a quartz deposit, and the former owner, now he died, or co-owner of Red Bull, which is a company many people know, is an
Mhm.
Austrian by the name of Didi Mateschitz. And he had huge swaths of land in different areas in Austria and had access himself to about 50 of these Erdstelle or underground access sites. Then he
Wow.
actually funded the mapping of those, and he even funded a probing from every 50 meters from one of those to another to verify the theory that it could be that all of these underground Erdstelle, or however you call it in German, underground earth sites, are connected via quartz vein deposits. And now, combining the depictions and potentially inscriptions and these rooms and the idea of these quartz connections, the idea came up that could it be that you could take this strange metal instrument, you would play 4 certain tones, and then basically, is it possible that you could teleport yourself
Mm.
from one of those underground chambers to another? And it even
Mhm.
came to that the individual by the name of Zeilinger, who even
Mhm.
recently won the Nobel Prize in Physics, because already 10 years ago, he was one of the few guys worldwide, I guess, that developed real world applications for quantum physics. Actually, from what I remember back then, it was a simple cryptography thing, mainly for banks. Yeah, so it's not like big quantum computer stuff, but simple things. But it worked, and his experiments were successful and have practical applications. He even got a Nobel Prize, for anyone who thinks that's worth anything, right? And he
Mhm. Mhm.
attended one of those presentations, and he was asked and was like, well, what do you think about it? Like, may seem completely crazy, but all the evidence we have point towards something like this. And then all this guy said was like, well, don't worry, like, I can well imagine it, so you can also imagine it. That's what I can say about that. And the idea here would be that this would actually include both inorganic and organic material. So it really could be like an effin, like portal room. You play these
Mhm.
sounds,
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then I imagine like joop, joop, and
Wow.
you're like 500 kilometers elsewhere. And if it can really be that this has existed hundreds or 1,000 years ago and is a technology, I mean, what
Mhm.
do you think? Wouldn't at least the highest level of controllers totally either use that technique or have developed a derivative from it to be able to have teleporter-like technology? And also, of course, there is like etchings on different walls, whereas they say it seems that the wall is molten. This only melts at a very high temperature. It's perfectly chiseled out.
Mhm. Mhm.
Basically even impossible to do with modern tools, both on the walls and also certain of the artifacts found. But with the artifacts, it's sometimes strange because the vessels, like small cups or something, seem kind of primitive. But then at the same time, some of the colors being used seem to be derived from like ultra pure cadmium or something like this powder. And also, what they found is they found like I believe, 15% aluminium alloy, but again, this is what they found in what they call prehistoric, supposedly 8,000 years ago deposit area. Um, but from what we understand, aluminium alloy was only invented 150 years ago. So we have another issue. And yeah, stuff like that. And there's like quite a few which stack together. Like I said, there is this bone, there is this statuette, there are these surgery tools, there are these strange
Mhm.
inscriptions from various times, these rooms, these magnetic energy sites where even today you stand there, you can feel something.
Mhm.
There is the quartz teleport connection. So I'm like, there is a lot there.
Oh my gosh, it's like it's so wild to think about, like this teleportation thing, and I'm open-minded to it. I think it's very possible. I'm not gonna explain how it's working or what, but I mean, like, why the fuck not? I mean, seriously, like, this world is very mysterious and it's crazier than we think, and understanding that there are or there were like civilizations that existed, in quote unquote ancient times. And when I look at like Sylvia Ivanova's channel, like New Earth, and she talks about like impossible statues and impossible paintings. They're like, you know, like like 1-2 micron thick or something like that, and they're in detail. They're almost like photographs, and these so-called marble statues that you can't chisel out. I mean, they look like they got like little frills and all kinds of like silky aspect to them. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And then, that might have been just a mundane technology compared to the other stuff that they might have had available to them. Who knows back in the day? And being able to transport yourself just like, like I don't know, just like a blink of an eye. I mean, yeah, why
Yes.
not? You know?
Also, it's interesting that apparently on that site, what they found, I believe it's called a hypocaust or something. Basically,
Hmm.
they found these floor heaters, which they say the Romans had, and they kind
Hmm.
of removed some of those layers, but it seemed to have
Hmm.
existed, and it really seems as if quite some of this area actually was a habitat at some point. And the idea
Hmm.
also being that even livestock was there. Of course, the area excavated, even though already very impressive because it's quite a few big rooms, but at the same time, of course, he was only allowed to excavate wherever his own property was, and he bought another property to be able to continue. But the government is doing everything and anything they can, supposedly, or this is just, let's say, rumors, whatever strange Freemasons want to buy it, the church is not happy about it. The whole reason much of this came out was because the church had a stack of documents written in medieval Latin, which in sometimes during the 40s was scooped up by Ahnenerbe, which is, this occult research organizations that the Nazis had for heritage uh, research, right? And then apparently after the war, it was given back to the church. And because let's say, the excavator who did this privately had good connections to this abbot, or not the abbot, but the archivar, and he even said now he's allowed to talk about it now that the archivar is no longer alive. But basically, the guy was calling him every time the abbot wasn't there, and said like, "Oh, now the abbot isn't there, and his representative isn't there. It'd be a good time if you come over now." And that was the time when they were allowed, or he was allowed, to look at this medieval Latin script stuff and try to decipher information. And even here, it appears that many things, either something they already found out in the excavation was then confirmed by the scripture, or something in the scripture was later confirmed by the excavation. So there is some corroboration here. But when the archivar died, the Vatican wasn't stupid, and of course they recalled the whole stack of documents to the Vatican, and it's now underground, the Vatican.
Wow. The intrigue never ends, and the Vatican's always freaking involved in everything. They got their pie. They got their fingers in every freaking pie out there, don't they?
Yeah, it is
Oh my
incredible,
goodness.
and this is another real-world example, which unfortunately, confirms the working thesis that we have.
Yeah, the theory, and really not so much of a theory that the Jesuits and the Catholics, they're behind it, like a lot of shit, a lot of shenanigans, and the manipulation of history, the manipulation of the reality that we call the flat Earth cosmology or the level Earth cosmology, and other things as well. So I don't know, man. It's just too wild to think about all this kind of stuff. And I remember though, like when we had like the September event, and then we invaded Iraq, and one of the storylines was like, wow, we went there for oil, but another thing is, and I don't know how true
Yeah,
this is that the museums were like ransacked over there. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
that was, I mean, I think the ransacking was even public. They just
Mm.
claimed it was random looters or something, but I think that even
Yeah,
made
yeah,
the
yeah.
news. And there is, of course, a story with Nebuchadnezzar and whatever Stargate he may have had. But honestly,
Hmm.
I sent you the pictures. If I look at that inscription, and that's the illuminated one because it's the inscription you can only see with UV light, which of course is great for the presentation. You lead people there and you're like, look, this is the interesting Templar, maybe teleportation room. Then you turn off the light, you put up the UV, and suddenly you have this Templar sign, this Stargate looking sign, and whatever. Then I'm like, I'm sorry, like when I was there, I literally saw like the intro credits of Stargate SG-1 running in my mind. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
No, yeah,
So,
no,
like
seriously.
if something like this exists, that's the connection there somewhere.
Yeah, well, and another really interesting thing, and this is like really off the cuff, is that I recently went back to Clubhouse just to hang out with the flat earthers and such. And there's one flat earther who I've known since 2020, 2021, and his name is Voiceover Guy. So, Voiceover Guy, if you're listening to me, I'm shouting you out. So, Voiceover Guy over at Clubhouse, who is still active over at Clubhouse, sent me a photo of himself because he was a Marine at that time sent to Iraq. He's around my age. And there's a photo of him in uniform, and he was actually one of the guys who was assigned to protect a Stargate while they were like excavating it or digging it out or transporting it. And there's a photo of himself with it. I'm gonna get this photo from him, and I'm gonna ask him if it's okay to share that with the public, but or at least with you, Raphael. But I'm gonna try to
Yeah,
see if I
or
can
we
share it with you.
can or we can ask him if we can put an AI filter over it so it seems like looks like a comic picture, but still, relays the concept, something like this.
Oh yeah, yeah, but I saw the photo. He did send it to me some time ago. I don't have it anymore, but it looked exactly like Stargate. The same gate as a Stargate looking one. You know, so the TV show, the movie Stargate, that one. It looked exactly the same. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can believe it. If I had to bet, I'd bet on it. And then again, I'm, how should I say? I don't know, angry, confused, worried. I'm not sure delighted because it's a mystery of considering that this type of tech exists. Plenty of people must
Mhm.
know about it, at least at the possibility of it existing. And all these people, either having no ethics, no connection to their fellow man, to themselves, or to whatever, that they really get it over themselves, not to share it and not to have
Yeah.
people benefit from it. Because I want to have a Stargate in every major city, and we just,
Yeah.
visit each other, and then we can visit probably the real, whatever it is, Mars and lands beyond or something, um,
Mhm.
like the actual ones, however this then works.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it is the case, but there could be, lands beyond the Antarctica. I don't know, and maybe that's what we call Mars or Venus or Jupiter or something. I don't, who knows, and maybe those people have very little interest in dealing with us like crazy humans. I mean, look how crazy people really are. You look at what's going on and they're like, oh my gosh, these people, they're so far gone, I'm not sure if I am willing to deal with them or not.
Yes, though at the same time, I mean, I don't know. How would you deal with it looking out from inside? It's impossible to say because we're not outside looking in. I
Hmm.
can imagine different scenarios, but I would imagine like if something like this exists and they are advanced, I mean, if I were in the position, I definitely would do whatever I can to assist the population within the Petri dish to liberate themselves. Even though this may
Mm.
look strange and it may actually be well in effect, and it just may be things we're not even considering. Um, in terms of whatever disclosure, I don't know because I'm just all I'm thinking is for the even just the observable petri dish uh, plane that we currently can understand and somehow inhabit. How should I say? Make life easier for them or do something and not just not have it reset every 100 years or something, and then again have them fight over ideology and the meaning of God. Because I honestly think it's ridiculous, and I also think honestly it's kind of pathetic. Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe that's a self-assessment, but I'm like, I understand that humans are capable of so many great things and great love and compassion and creativity and all of this. And as we discussed before, if not 99.9% of popular culture was directly aimed against it, we'd already be free, even without any, fancy magic tech, which may well exist. Yeah, just getting along with each other, not being confused and distracted by BS, and not willingly exploit other individuals for no reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a combination of stuff. I mean, obviously the programming is heavy, but there is this thing called Dunning-Kruger where people think they are, smarter than they actually are type of situation. And look, this is not to disparage people who have lower intelligence or something like this, because we're all, dumber than somebody else. I mean, that's just a matter of fact,
Yes.
and it's just about being honest with ourselves about like where we are, who we are, and what position that we have in this world. And but any of us, even if you had like high IQ, you could be suffering from Dunning-Kruger, which means that you think you're smarter than you are when you're not. And I think a lot of the people in the average, I wouldn't say intelligence, but like average, like the under average programming or the status quo programming, they are suffering from Dunning-Kruger because they were taught about like, oh yes, if anybody think the Earth could be a flat Earth, they must be just batshit crazy. They must be just stupid as fuck or something like this. They'll just come up with, and then so they just like have this assumed position that they must be smarter than a flat earther, and they're kind of led to believe that they're
Yeah.
smarter than an average flat earther.
Although, I mean, maybe going back to the Earth topic also is, or I mean, it's combined anyways. What I find kind of strange, I mean, whoever else said this, I'm just quoting what other people said now, but some flat Earth channel was like, yeah, I'm not even naming names now, but some are like literal punching bags, or I'm even
Mm,
wondering if I would even want to debate certain individuals because I'm like, maybe that's not the level of discussion you want, neither in terms of understanding and intellectual honesty, nor in terms of basic etiquette. And then it just looks to me, one example, FTFE, which I stumbled across maybe because I was researching more just of these Earth videos, and I like watching some of them just because that I understand more where these people really coming from, how are they arguing, and how are they behaving, right? And then it
mhm,
seems like deliberately he's pulling up sometimes even individuals that may not exactly know what's up, or maybe not even saying anything against them, but maybe may not be the most high caliber, even debaters or whatever, just
mhm.
to make an, I don't want to use the word, but just to make a shit show, basically, yeah, and to
Yeah,
be able
yeah,
to like argue and make BS arguments and never really try to understand the other perspective, but just to make a debate and make everyone go crazy.
yeah,
Which of course then it's like, because it hopefully research topic should be entertaining because then it's easier to absorb and understand, but still the main focus should be actually understanding perspectives or whatever else, and not just trying to bash on someone. But that's of course just my naive again perspective.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's true. I don't know. I'm just trying to do my best to try to approach it in the proper way with everybody, and then try to be as quote unquote objective as possible. Of course, I'm going to have my biases. Of course, I'm going to have my limitations. Of course, I'm going to have my mistakes and such. So I ain't perfect in any way, but I just feel that these topics are important to us, and that's why we spend our life energy into them. About the fake history. That's another one. And if I had all the time in the world to do research, that's what I would love to do. I would just go into every freaking topic I possibly could. But that's not the position that I'm in, and that's okay. I'm not complaining about it. It's just that I am grateful. I'm grateful to have arrived to even where I am at now, and that's not to say I have arrived to any kind of pinnacle at all or apex of any kind of truth at all about anything, but just understanding, because like the amount of people who see the way we do about this reality is a very small percentage. And that doesn't make us special or whatever. It just shows you how massive this conspiracy it really is, and how massive the amount of people who are under mind control. And it's like, wow, it's huge. I mean, like we shouldn't even be in this corner of the internet to be talking about this. Like it should be common knowledge, and everybody should be just shrugging their shoulders like, yeah, earth is level. Like, what are you talking about? Like, where's the world where we could do that? But no, we got to be like, oh my gosh, do you know the earth is flat? Do you know the earth is level? Do you know why? And stuff like that. And I go to these so-called debates, and I've gone to one of the channels on Clubhouse, and man, they were just they were just blurting out like, Google, NASA ready answers about like all the reasons as to why we live on a globe. And I'm just like, man, these guys are just like they have no thoughts of their own. It's just their rinse and repeat reading off a script without having ever thought through exactly what they're actually saying, like talking about vacuum of space next to like, a pressurized system, stuff like that, so I don't know, you know.
Yeah, all I can say is agreed. But again, also even this seems to come to a head. I am honestly expecting all kinds of media things, and just like many others are. Also, I'm honestly expecting that for this experiment, they will actually observe whatever they supposedly should be observing,
Mm,
because I have the very strong intuition that quite a few of the individuals on the quote unquote globe team, through some way, shape, or form, have been pre-informed about
hmm.
whatever this ALE company is observing every time they go there in December, or whatever it is. Yeah? Or maybe a cycle that occurs every 20 years. God knows what it is. Yeah. Or even because they were kind of a little bit, maybe not so quick to believe it, I'd even say, even I'm not really, but quote unquote Team Sun Simulator. It's maybe not the cheapest thing to do, but if we just consider how much resources are available, all kinds of tech that is unknown, God knows what they could be coming up with. But maybe it's also just not necessary, because it's some kind of natural cycle or natural thing that just occurs there. But again, my intuition would tell me that some individuals are so gung ho about this because they basically know the result in advance. If this is true, of course, would be incredibly disingenuous. But unfortunately, just observing some of these people on the screen, I would not exactly put it past them to do something like that.
Yeah, well, for sure. And this is something that Z and I talked about a couple days ago, is that according to the Zetetic Astronomy book by Lady Blount,
Oh,
and
yes.
she, basically they laid it out and they said, okay, we're Zetetic, and we admit to the fact that there is a midnight sun and 24-hour sun down in Antarctica. We don't know how it works. And everybody has forgotten about it. And that was 120 years ago, 1904, 120 years ago when that was actually published. And so like it's to me what could be happening, and this is something that Z and I had thought about, is that most everybody has forgotten about it, and like the flat earth cosmology is relatively new again. Everybody was so programmed in and locked in, and they know it from the controller side because they listen into the consciousness and the trend of the population. And so knowing that, and then for 10 years, because like really, I woke up
Yes.
to flat earth and for 2014, and I would say I'm like an OG, quote unquote. And yes, there are other people who have woken up to flat earth before me, but 95% plus woke up later than that. That's fine. I'm not better than them in any way because of this. What I'm saying is that in 10 years period, for 9.5 years, I believe this dielectric earth is stationary type of thing. I'm going to talk about that later, but I'm just saying that the idea, the seed of like getting people on board with this circling sun, as we talked about, and then it could not be possible in
Yeah.
Antarctica, could have been planted, and then they understood that this was going to be the plan from the very beginning. I have to think that they could have this kind of foresight, and then they purposefully hide information and say, okay, let's not show any videos. Let's just not reveal anything about Antarctica. Let them speculate. And then they're going to latch on to this idea of the circling sun. And then, like now, the TFE is going on because what? 95% plus of the flat earthers believe in the circling sun. And so they got them by the balls that way. That's just me.
Completely agreed. And even without particularly nefarious intent or anything, just saying could also well be then that, for example, Dave with the app, which, although from what I understand, he has been informed about potential conflicts or inaccuracies, but
Hmm.
sticking with this, even without any directive from anyone, but simply an unspoken understanding that, well, as long as you don't include all these caveats and all these other maybe more extended theories, ideas, and so on, you will have no problem getting on to bigger shows or whatever it is. And again, this
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a background actual agreement or anything. can be unspoken, can be whatever, can just
Mm.
be the things that way are things how ways are developing. But what I want to, how should I say? I want to see Z on Roseanne Barr. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Z, with all the top, people. I mean, he definitely knows how to conduct himself, and he knows all the, ins and outs of the arguments, and, I obviously would love to see you, talking about the fake history with, top people out there as well, and but the sad truth of the matter is, I remember, for example, like, some years ago, I was reading like, Michael Cremo. He was he wrote a book called The Forbidden Archaeology, and, in the book, he was basically was saying that, like, like all these people who were like, actually, telling the academia that, like, because there's with the stratas, and the further you go down, that's the theory, that the older the material should be, but they're finding out things that are actually more recent, at a very, deep, digs, at a like, further stratas down, and these people, they're not getting any kind of, funding. They lose jobs. They get, like, I don't know, peer pressured into doing something else, stuff like this. And so we know these kind of like games are played at the very top level, especially, if you want to be a professor and tenure, you have to toe the line. You have to toe the line about what history is, what this evolution thing is. You have to toe the line about everything. Otherwise, you're going to get kicked out. Long story short.
Exactly.
And
That's
some lose
it.
lives too. Yeah, absolutely. Some lose lives too. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're correct. That's then the next level, I guess. And this also should give, let's say, some compassion maybe for any creators or researchers that maybe stop publicizing or whatever, because I can understand everyone, values their life and all of that. And I just, in a way, I almost want to say, I hope I never stumble across anything too exclusive individually, so I'm not, it's not even
Mm.
relevant. I'm just relaying others' information, let's say. Um, but yeah, I can understand that. But yeah, it's the real thing. And like I mentioned initially, even just, from the past few talks I had over the weekend, this is confirmed numerous times. And also the presenter themselves, because he was traditionally educated and then was kind of dumbfounded and astounded when he heard of all these very high level material researchers, history researchers, archaeologists, this and that all in one way or another told him, well, this is something I'm not supposed to research or not supposed to sign or not supposed to even think about, and definitely not supposed, to approve and label in this way or whatever. Yeah. So this is a real thing simply because, like you said, you're not going to get any funding anymore. One example to anyone who wants more about this is Professor Hamamoto. I'm not sure if you stumbled across him already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, he has some very interesting things that love for you to talk with him and Andreas and me and other people, and he's getting more exposure now with the whole with Sean Atwood and so on. But
Mm.
anyways, he's also gone through this whole thing of how you basically get blocked by academia and how it's very clear there are things you're supposed to talk about and things you're not supposed to talk about, and that's it. And then all I can say is, everyone, save yourselves and your children the college debt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because unless you want them to be a drone, and like that. But
Yeah, easier said than done because, a lot of people are just, like, even during the economic downturns and stuff like this, it's one of those things that, everybody just felt, programmed to, like, "We gotta send your kids to college. You gotta send your kids to university, and it doesn't
oh yeah,
matter if you're there in 50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in debt, because in the long run, they're gonna be able to go somewhere with it." And then there are people who got master's, degrees who are, like, working at Starbucks, and I'm not in any position to judge anybody. Look, like, I graduated with a, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I haven't done shit with art, and then I became a nomad for a while, and, I'm basically living homeless, so I'm not here to, say but I don't have any debt because I was lucky. I went to a cheap school. My dad was, rich enough to, pay for me to go to school, so I'm very grateful for that. But I know a lot of people who have, like, huge debts that is, like, ongoing for, like, 10, 20, 30 years of their life, and some of them, they're like, there's no way they're gonna be able to pay it off, you know?
Yeah, it's crippling debt. There is also some, I forgot the exact mechanism, but there is some really strange, background financial leverage shenanigans going on with the university funding and then the how these credits are being underwritten and all of that. I forgot the details, but it's, part of the huge financial scam. But even
Mm,
here, I'm already like, how insane is this? I'm not even gonna go 30 years into debt because I have a nice house, but even only because I have an education. And Europe,
mhm,
it's a little bit different in some places. For example, in Austria, if you're an Austrian citizen like me,
mhm,
you could
mhm,
technically study up to doctor's level. And if you do it well, you don't even pay anything.
mhm,
Otherwise, you don't pay a lot. So the basic higher education is free, and then you could get like an assistance position, which basically like one friend is doing, then helps you write your doctorate. You get funding for that. Maybe you don't
mhm,
get rich from it immediately, but you can kind of jive with it in a way that at least you're not racking up tens of thousands of debt, and you can actually end up with a postgraduate degree, a doctorate, and even a professorship. But unless you have very rich parents or very particular connections in the US, that's even impossible. Although, also, even with this one example of a friend, this is a philosophy university, so it's particular in itself. But even that friend mentioned to me, yeah, publicizing books about philosophy, but even though not agreeing with it, more or less being forced to include whatever current gender studies standards and blah blah,
oh my God.
just to be more or less allowed to be able to publish the other, genuine and honest research that was done. So that's an ongoing thing. It's
Oh
ridiculous.
God. Yeah, it is freaking ridiculous. I mean, I'm just so tired of that, and I just don't even wanna do it actually makes me pissed off. Like, I don't wanna be angry or upset, but, like, I'm just, like, tired of anybody pushing this kind of a trans agenda on me, and I have to adhere to, like, "Okay, you are, Bethany," or I don't know, uh, Frankie or so I don't know what, I mean? Like, "You're Patty. You're not Patrick. You're Patty," or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, forget about that shit. Like, I don't wanna deal with that anymore, you know? And,
But
but we have to toe the line, you know? Otherwise you're gonna get canceled.
to an extent, currently, yes. Although I want to say 100% sure actually that this will also be used probably now. Who knows how many more timed big time revelations surrounding celebrities and politicians and God knows what higher echelons are going to come about. I'm
Mhm,
thinking about the current rapper thing. But imagine, I mean, as a high level controller, I'll gladly, even really, ritually or actually, or just humiliation ritual style, quote unquote, sacrifice the whole so-called boule, which is like the supposedly, um, let's say, hip hop, and in this case, quote unquote, black higher level secret society.
yeah.
Especially because, from what I understand, certain of these higher level controllers actually are pretty racist. I'll say it as it is.
Mhm,
Um, if then this would allow me to, for example, actually put in Trump again, and he's going to make you a nice economy. He's going to make America great. He's going to maybe even make good deals and give some kind of stability and peace. But at the
mhm,
same time, he's just going to introduce digital ID. And because
yep.
everyone has been so fed up with all the gender study, whatever, and he's slashing all of that, that's a that's a small sacrifice if I can move along that path. And I'm pretty sure they're doing everything they can to again co-opt and harness, um, let's say again the 30 years ago, it would have said mainline liberal Democrat line. Today, it would be the evil right wing extremist Republican line. Um, yeah, but just bring that back. If they can also bring with it whatever other agendas they actually want to push, they'd readily sacrifice all of that and even all the pop stars or whatever else there could be, because it's a small price in the big game, let's say.
Yeah, and, Flow State I don't know, a couple days ago or whatever, when he was over here, he brought up this Agenda 47 that Trump and the Republican Party are wanting to push. And I didn't go through it at all, but basically, long story short, according to him, he says that it is basically socialistic, communistic in its essence, but has the veneer of the Republican Conservative Party. and the fact that it is, and you were here actually. You put in the Surah 47, which is
Yes.
Muhammad, right? And so like Agenda 47. So I mean that's another thing that, I mean, we don't have to talk about this too much, but like because we know the Hegelian dialectic of the left, red and blue, and left right and all this kind of stuff. But what I mean, like other countries, like I remember being in Korea, and like back in early 2000s, and people were so interested in the US politics and who was going to become president. And I think that's more or less kind of true. Like other countries, they like really care
Yes.
about US politics. Is that true in Austria as well?
Yes, I mean, most people don't realize, Germany and by extension Austria, because Austria, I mean, it has a
Mm,
particular status for different
mm,
reasons, but also in terms of mainland politics and economy, it's of course in a great way dependent on Germany, and Germany
mhm,
still is basically an occupied US colony. I mean, I'm sorry, what to say.
mhm.
And that applies
Yep.
both to the military bases and also to whatever shows we get, cultural influences. It's very Americanized. It's still German, of course, but you have all these things. And yes, they make a big deal of it, even so far as that, because I'm on purpose, watching Austrian politicians and whatever debates, just so I see where the Overton window is at. And even they are
Mhm,
mentioning, yeah, it's so strange. Many people, they're also obsessed with the American election. So actually, I heard that recently. And here it's definitely true that oftentimes they reference Trump or Biden when giving
mhm,
examples or just commenting on politics. So it's definitely, how should I say, they're facing that direction for sure. But of
mhm.
course, usually with a very, very low level of information. It's usually like, either CNN or Fox headline level of actually being informed on anything, which then, of course, makes it kind of ridiculous. But, what can you expect?
Yeah, yeah. What can you expect? And I mean, these are mainstream media, and they don't care. Like I'm a little blip in the radar. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I don't even show up on the radar. And then even some of the more prominent so-called truth channels, they're barely a blip, and maybe only one or two within the flat Earth community who actually get to go and mingle with some of the bigger channels, like maybe Alex Stein or Dave Weiss. They have the opportunity to go and actually go and talk with Alex Jones and stuff like this, and even Alex Jones will be considered like, whoa, like conspiracy theory guy, but like, uh, but really, a lot of people still watch CNN and NBC and Fox. I mean, these are still big, channels in the world. I mean, they have a huge say, like Wall Street, Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, they are the places where people actually go and read and listen to. So, but I imagine like Austria is like more liberal minded. I don't know. Are they more
Um,
liberal minded, do you think?
Please specify a question, but before you do that, one thing I can relay, what I heard, let's say it's just a rumor that already 20 or almost 30 years ago, someone who got into contact with some more interesting echelons in terms of media basically was told, look, if you want to really know it, there's only four people worldwide that control the entirety of media. They meet once
Mm.
a year in New York, and there you have it, basically.
Well, there you
But
go.
please,
I
what do you
guess.
mean in terms of liberal for Austria? How do you mean liberal?
Yeah, I'm talking more left leaning. Are they more
Oh,
like
no, no.
into like Kamala or
No,
what?
no, that's the funny thing. And anyone who's interested in a little foray in this, you can check out the last New Europa on my channel
Hmm.
with Andreas. We talk about this like 30 days, 30 minutes of Austrian politics. What is the general consensus actually to anyone who can think straight is that overall, generally, in terms of elections, whoever trusts elections, you actually have a slight or solid, let's say, conservative leaning majority in Austria in terms of overall sentiment. Also, what they claimed, whether it's true or not, when the whole lockdown thing happened, they brought out studies and said Austria is one of the most anti-science, read anti-vaccination places around, which may be one
Wow.
of the reasons why only Austria, along with Bavaria, which is the southernmost state
Yep.
bordering Austria and Germany, were the
Hmm.
places with the craziest restrictions and were one of the few places at least in Austria, also in Germany, where they announced they actually gonna have a mandate, whereas if you are not getting it, then you're just gonna have to pay fines or whatever. And it went so far that one of the state secretaries in Austria back then even said, yeah, well, technically, if you didn't get it, it would be illegal for you to live in Austria. Of course, making up stuff, but this is the rhetoric. And so, how I want to tie this together, what you had during the lockdown period is only one party, the so-called Freedom Party, which would be the evil right-wing party, let's say, that had any valid criticism because of some conversations I had with people that even were involved in some levels there. I can talk about this more some other time. Even here, it's
Mhm.
interesting to hear the background because, from the outside, a party may seem monolithic. But then if you hear from someone who actually contributed, and even you hear cool stories like positive contributions they could make to politics, right? And then also
Mhm.
hear maybe one politicians being very much against mandates, but 5 years ago they actually argued for mandates, which then at least tells you that this supposed politician doesn't really know what's going on. They were just flipping positions, or, for example, they don't really know about virology, because then you would never recommend something like that, right? Hearing background stories like this. But anyways, you have this one party doing heavy and proper criticism, not going as far as we do, but at least the basic things. And now they won the most votes, which is 29%. Honestly, I'm surprised that they allowed this result.
Hmm.
But of course, it may be part of a larger machination, because right now it seems as if many countries in Europe will actually get, let's say, higher vote counts for the right-wing parties, which are usually anti, at least illegal immigration, and also critical of the lockdowns. But the joke is in Austria that you have four other parties now, which will be in the new parliament. The Black Party, let's say the Economist Conservative Party, which had been allied with the Green Party recently. You also have the Socialist Party or Social Democrats, and you have the Neoliberal Party. And
Mhm.
basically, all of these four other parties agree, even though the Freedom Party got the most votes, they all agree they're not going to cooperate with them. And
Mhm.
here again, I have to ask the question if this is like a double floor trick or something, because it's
Hmm.
so obvious that this is just some political class that out of a whim or whatever is like, oh, I don't want to play with you in the sandbox. And every other day, the president of Austria, which is from the Green Party, completely useless, never opened his mouth during the lockdowns. And now he's talking about reconciliation and all of that. But instead of telling the parties, well, these guys got the most votes, do what you can at least to try, they're doing all kinds of shenanigans. And it may well be that we end up with a three-party coalition only to prevent the Freedom Party from entering the government. I don't believe in representative democracy, anyways, but
Mhm.
it's just so blatantly obvious to anyone who's not, let's say, brainwashed into this leftist paradigm, just like you had with Trump, basically saying that one guy is the devil for whatever made up reason. If you don't follow along this logic, then you can really see how they are just making up reasons just to make sure that they will stay in power, basically. And here I'm
Yeah.
almost again wondering, is their goal that next vote, the Freedom Party will have 55% and then actually install some kind of dictatorship things because of the new crisis and they get bribed or whatever? Like, what's the goal here? Is
Right.
really, really strange. Really strange.
Yeah, it's beyond me to be able to comprehend because it's like trying to assume like okay, we know it's all made up. Okay, fine. But then like how what's the long-term goal because like it's hard for me to see, and are they kind of just making shit up as they're going along or is it like well laid out and they got certain it's kind of like a
Both, I
stock
think.
market thing or you know? Yeah, most likely, right?
Yeah, so if I would have to guess now, I'd say there's a long-term plan and certain patterns, which
Yeah.
they may even prototype, or announce 30, 40 years in advance. I think the
Yeah.
oldest thing referring to the lockdowns was from 1960s or something. In the year
Mm,
2020, a big disease will break out, and you know, but I guess they can do that all the time and then concurrently always adapt for like short-term plans because who's gonna dig up the video they made about the prophecy from 2015, which never actually occurred, right? So they could make
Yeah.
10 of those, or like 10 prototype plans, and then just flow with whatever seems to work out. I think both are necessary to have a handle on the system and on the masses.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that. I mean, and it just make me kind of like shrug my shoulders and raise my arm up and be like, okay, I guess like, what can I do? Like maybe I should be like Cypher and be like, okay, let me just go back. Like better to be ignorant from all this since there's nothing I can do anyways. Like, fuck this shit. you know?
It's an interesting consideration, but the one thing is if you can really, this is what I wanted to bring up earlier, actually, like a philosophical
Mm,
topic. I recently
mhm,
discussed with some friends, and we kind of came up with it on a funny night. But the
mhm,
idea that the only thing you can really know, if you are honest with yourself,
mhm,
is whether you are honest with yourself or not.
mhm,
And that
mhm.
this is the only real knowledge or real security you can have. I think there's something to it. Of course, it's always the big question, how can I really know if I'm being honest? But
Mhm.
it's at least in terms of a type of attitude or alignment that if I want to know, at least I will be able to go through the process to be able to become more honest with myself. And then I
Yeah.
can still say, I don't really know exactly, is the earth now round? Is there a space? Is it level? Where is the water going? Or is it maybe rising? Or what exactly is happening? But at
Mhm.
least I can honestly check back with my own honest view again, if I allow that for myself and not allow it to be clouded by programming or by lying to myself because I want to keep being right or whatever else.
Mhm.
But I think that's a great thing because that's, like almost your connection. In New Age, you would say to a higher self. Christians would say to Jesus, some
Mhm.
others would say to the source or whatever else you want, your intuition. And I think that's maybe the greatest thing we can all have, because that's something we can all each individually work on for ourselves. And all I can say for me is, as so many other people, I've definitely been programmed in 100 different ways. I feel very privileged because I had many questions I wouldn't really let go of ever,
Yeah.
and doubts. But then still, I will honestly say, and it's an ongoing process, it's consciously taken me many, many years to deprogram from all of these things, but it was a conscious effort and path. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible or not. People can judge now how confused I am in a different way, maybe. But, at least, how should I say? At least I'm not believing any random, NASA space footage they're throwing at me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's about discernment. It's about critically thinking, and it's actually, asking oneself, like, am I biased? Am I actually quote unquote objective? And yes, like, there could be a kind of some kind of residue or like something could be tainted in there. But at the same time, there's some process of thinking to actually come to certain conclusions, and that's a combination of free will. One has to be willing to want to do that, but on the other hand, you have to consider all the different ways of thinking, and why this way or that way of thinking about something or considering something is a logical, I don't know, conclusion. So like there's a lot involved in coming to a point, right? And also considering like, okay, like, I used to believe in this thing, and that also I think is a very humbling thing, because when once you go through various onion layers of like belief system,
Yes.
and you have actually gone through it, you understand that you have not completely arrived, but you've gone through a lot, and you remember yourself thinking like, oh yes, I remember thinking this completely, and I don't know why I thought it that way, but now I can never imagine myself like ever going back to that.
Indeed. But also, I guess in most cases, remember asking the question, or remember being open to a new understanding or willing to achieve at a better understanding. And
Hmm.
again, maybe not my naive view, but I do have the strong impression there is some type of higher order guiding
Hmm.
force or energy that then, in very strange, sometimes winding ways, actually leads you there. And I can
Yeah.
say I would not, I would not exchange it for $100 million even, if because that would then mean, being ignorant of basic health ideas, being completely
Yeah.
ignorant of whatever this life is, or simply being dependent on some random BS handler guy giving me a call and be like, "Oh, don't talk about this," or whatever. Like, not
Yes, sir.
interested.
But that's the thing, like, people sometimes they want to just give away their autonomy to somebody else, and they believe that life is just easier that way, and they just become automatons. They just become useless idiots or, useless eaters, and that's the game that we have, and so that's like, how do you value yourself? How do you value your life? It's a
Yes,
philosophical question, So, like, and it's actually kind of a democracy in a way, because, like, I'm not talking about voting like with like left or right, but like you're voting with your thoughts. You're voting with your behavior. You're voting with the way in which you conduct yourself, and then you can conduct yourself in a quote unquote normie way. It's like, okay, they got all the answers for me. I just have to listen, and they just tell me what to do, and I'm just going to go and do it. That will be the very normie way, but that's a very lazy way to live life, of course. Of course, you can do it, but that's going to lead you in a direction where you're going to turn into a pig, and then they're going to slaughter you like a pig. But like, where we want to go is
honestly,
that, okay, yeah, go ahead.
no, exactly this phrasing was the image conjured up in my mind, even with the whole final experiment thing. Not saying
Hmm.
anyone's gonna get hurt, and I'm wishing the best to all teams and that they come back healthier, because I guess the air there is very clean. And I honestly
Hmm.
don't expect anyone that anything will happen to anyone, maybe except,
Hmm.
tripping over a snow globe. Um, but in terms of ideologically, like you pointed out, getting people locked into a false dichotomy and then just
Hmm.
pretending going along, it's enough for a Netflix special, because I still hear random people which haven't researched it, which generally are open-minded. And
Hmm.
because I can't help myself, of course, when I'm going through all my favorite topics, I bring this up as well. And then quite a few times, people coming back with, "Oh, haven't I? I have seen this, and this flat earther made a fool of himself, haha." And I don't know all the background and details, but I heard enough Globebusters to know that at least from their perspective, there is a lot more to say about this and contextualize it, and there were real findings. But of course, people watching the Netflix special and already laughing at the stupid flat level earthers, however, people
Hmm.
questioning NASA, they're not looking further. And then they come back with these arguments. And then I'm telling them, this is just one recent example, sending them other things also about the whole Bluetooth stuff we talked about. What's the end result? Not getting any more replies. Not even saying it's because of any particular reason, but this is the other thing. Then who's really then willing to actively refine their belief systems? And one thing
Yeah.
you said, again, philosophically, or call it new agey, call it however you like, but it's self love, self worth,
Hmm.
self value, like you said, um, I think is absolutely necessary to allow yourself to go down that path, because you will be ostracized in some way, shape, or form. You obviously, and I don't need to tell the chat this, or probably anyone listening, but you will not be able to talk about this to anyone. If you say the wrong way, people will look at you strangely, or you
Yeah.
will not get the most views because you have a more refined perspective. So I think it's a lot to do with self-worth. There's a whole thing to say about ego and so on. You discussed this at length here as well, all the issues that this can bring,
Yeah.
as we can see exemplified. But still, on a basic level, honest self-worth and self-honesty, I think, are absolutely fundamental. And I want to say I congratulate you, everyone in chat, and even myself for having a modicum of that at least, because
Yeah.
otherwise you cannot possibly get to the pocket where we're at right now. And again, I'd have to say, I don't think I'd trade anything for it, because for some strange reason, I want to know. And for me, that's the most valuable thing,
Hmm.
alongside valuing autonomy, like you said, valuing free will, respecting it, and just wanting everyone to have a good life, and not in whatever way siphoning off someone else simply because I consider it completely pathetic and
Hmm.
retarded.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you said it so well. And I just feel like it's like really shows this world is showing everybody what you value. And doing what we're doing shows what we value. who we choose to be also shows to the world what we value. And people would maybe laugh at it, scoff at it, sneeze at it, and say like, "These are stupid people." How much millions do you have in your pocket? Like, what do you got? But I feel that I have what is called a sense of honor, sense of duty, sense of integrity. And these things are so valuable. Like once lost, I don't know if anybody can ever regain it back. That's the thing. That's how precious that they are, and only those who understand the value of this thing understand it. And it may not be valuable for everybody, and it's not meant to be valuable for everybody. If people want to like just say, okay, I'm ready to you know give that away for some bucks, okay, you have that free will, I suppose, right?
Indeed, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not even judging anyone. I can just, at least for now, and hopefully, I'm saying this now will never change, or I will not be put into position to in any way modify that. I think that's the yeah, that's what it's about. That's the most interesting also. I don't know. Again, see, it's like a puzzle or something, understanding this place, and I'm just not satisfied with all the obfuscation. I'm not even sure if I can explain you why. Probably this could be related to, childhood traumas or whatever things, being wronged, or maybe simply it's because we're living in a period of economic decline. So more
Mm,
people are asking questions, and this decline, of course, has been going on for many decades now. Yeah, because
yeah.
so often I'm imagining maybe someone in the 50s, 60s. Of course, everything just got trashed. You're getting super heavy psyops from all sides, but hey, you're getting 10% more pay every year. Life is good. You can get a bigger car. Um, so there's many things to consider to be able to understand how people got to where they're at. But yeah, for me, I don't know if it was ever really an option. Um, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and I don't really have much to say for myself in terms of economics or whatnot. I don't have much, but I've had things, I've lost things, and sometimes it's a blessing both ways, I suppose, to have a lot of things or not to have a lot of things, and I think it's just about like being okay with the things that you do have or lack thereof, and just trying to take it moment at a time and live life, and just consider to oneself. And I'm not here to tell anybody what should be important to anybody else. Like I just asked this question for myself, like what is important to me? Why is it important to me? So if it is important to me, I want to put in the time and the energy towards that thing that is important to me. So that's all I can really say about that.
Yes. And so we're here. Thank you, Nudge.
Yeah, but
And
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you spending the time. It was kind of like out of nowhere, and it was how would I say, like a little bit um, of a surprise that you're like, oh, okay, I'm still up, but I definitely want to bring you back, and we'll spend more time together. We'll pick an appropriate time for us both because like right now it's got to be past 5 in the morning, and you've been up all night. So, and there's some monologuing that I will want to do, so if you have any thoughts that you want to share now with everybody before maybe we say goodbye and say goodnight for today, and then we'll pick it up another time.
yes, I guess there's many more interesting things to talk about. Again, I want to commend you. I love watching the interviews you're doing, your diplomatic approach. It's amazing and it's really great. And I think everyone listening appreciates how great you are at being diplomatic and then always, pulling out the information from people that even may seem adversarial. I honestly always commend and admire that. I usually try a similar approach. Maybe that's also partially why, but really sometimes I'm astounded, like how differing opinions and you gladly put them on. And even like last time, someone trolling you, I'm already in the chat, like, is this a joke? Like, what is going on? And you're super cordial. I think it's amazing. I guess that's why people are watching. I very much appreciate it. I'm looking forward to maybe doing topical things or just talking or panel or whatever. And yeah, thank you very much. And everyone enjoys the rest of the stream.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for popping in and sharing your thoughts. Definitely some very interesting things talked about, especially about that underground structures, 33 levels, quartz crystals
Well,
down
30,
there.
33 levels was in Vienna somewhere, but yeah,
Yeah.
the quartz crystal connections, all the caves. And again, even here you had basically one of the most known industrialists. I mean, he owned, I guess, 49% of Red Bull. Everyone knows Red Bull. This guy had huge swaths, I'm repeating myself, but just so everyone gets it, huge swaths of land in Austria, and for some reason was interested in surveying it and all of that. And most likely he also had some kind of connections and so on. But he was funding these things. He pushed it through that the government allowed him to measure every 15 meters and verify, yes, there's a quartz vein going on. Yeah. You have the whole resonance ideas. So I feel, and why this is particularly interesting to me, certain of these old world ideas here are converging, and then maybe we can get one step closer to actually, first of all, understand, factor in these technologies, and then ideally, finally, allow them to be adapted for civilian use as well, and just get over the whole scarcity game. That's what I
Yeah.
wish for.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would push for that. This scarcity game is we don't have we can live in abundance for sure. This guy's still alive. This 49% Red Bull owner, is he still alive?
This is interesting because he recently passed on. He was quite old. His son took over, who unfortunately does not seem to be as interested in this. But yeah, basically just to point out that again, you have high level people with connections. And then strangely, even though these topics are, not allowed to be presented at a regular university, but these top level guys, they very much are interested. And I mean, that tells you quite something, I would suggest. So just to maybe reinforce also the idea to anyone who's interested in Hollow Earth and all of that, people that really got connections and money, they're spending bucks to get more information about that. So anyone interested, how should I say, you're not wrong in sensing that there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Definitely, hopefully, we'll get more information in regards to what may be going on down there and what is it all about. And definitely, we'll have to talk about this fake history more. I share videos from Andreas and your channel on my channel regarding David Ewing Jr.'s interviews. So I highly recommend people to check out. And 19, remember, 19 is an important number. Okay, like basically. You have to know what 19 is about, and you have to know that it's connected to 33. And then you have to understand that all these writers, and if you want to be successful, you have to know what 19 and 33 is about, right?
Indeed, indeed. Well, good thing we're learning about it. Maybe we can somehow adapt it as well in the most positive and honest sense. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna have maybe 19 channels or maybe 19 chapters. You got to
Yeah.
do something with 19, and then people will pick it up. It's a magic number. It means success, right? So, anyways, Raphael, I hope you have a good night or morning over there, and thank you again for stopping by. And then we'll definitely we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks everyone in chat. Enjoy yourselves.